why it's okay to defend statues. Okay, I want to start this video by saying violence, mobbing, Nazi salutes and name calling are completely unacceptable. Even protesting itself should be given a second thought given coronavirus. Many of the people protesting yesterday, and some of the week before, clearly had ill intentions. But it's important not to stereotype everyone with the same opinion. Just because you believe Black Lives Matter doesn't necessarily mean you believe in the removal of statues. Just because you're against the removals of statues doesn't mean you're against Black Lives Matter, or you're racist, or you're a Nazi. And just because you were at the Black Lives Matter protests doesn't mean you're far left. Right, now that I've cleared the slate, we can make the argument. I've defended Black Lives Matter on this channel multiple times. I've told the history of how black people faced oppression and still face oppression and discrimination. I've mentioned how All Lives Matter simply denies and fails to understand that discrimination. But I don't agree with the removal of statues and comedy as a result of this latest Black Lives Matter protests. It's not because I agree that monuments to slavers should exist. They shouldn't. It's not because I'm scared of somehow rewriting history as if history can't change or new information can't be brought to light. It can. But it's because I disagree with things being decided because somebody else finds them offensive. Yes, black people don't deserve to have this constant reminder that slavers and racists are valued when they feel the opposite. But removing statues and comedies by force achieves nothing other than empathy and feeling sorry for black people, making that left-wing, empathetic political view the only viewpoint in our history and in our present-day society. This removes any other view, and by removing viewpoints, you're removing democracy. Racist or derogatory viewpoints towards black people should be argued against and proven to be incorrect, not completely removed from society. By removing viewpoints from society, you're taking away the information people have to be able to form their own critical arguments in their own minds and come up with their own viewpoints. You're also presenting this idea that black people are somehow to be pitied and mollycoddled, when all that does is keep them in this constant state of oppression. Black people deserve to be seen as stronger than yesterday, not a replacement to yesterday. Black statues should sit alongside white slavers to tell the story of how black people overcame a great deal of oppression and can and still will overcome a great deal more. But it's equally important to remember the good things that those slave owners and racists did too. I know, they were bad people, but they did some good stuff. And history always has two sides. Without them, this country would not have been the economically successful democracy that it is today. But most of all, those statues and comedies exist as a reminder of democracy, not because we're in some kind of dictatorship like Iraq. It's because we live in a democracy that all kinds of art, as long as enough people like it, is allowed. And you can't really paint a full picture without all the colours to hand, including, I'm afraid, some of the darker, scarier, less tasteful shades of history. But most importantly, and the reason why these statues can't just be in some kind of museum, in my opinion, is this growing sense in the UK that everything has to virtue signal and be pure and innocent in nature. Everything has to be locked away and sensible and kept away from feeble minds. And that means that bad opinions aren't allowed. They're immoral. No longer do things exist based on democratic arguments, votes, ratings, and a majority rule, but on a moral script similar to a medieval Bible. You're blasphemous if you speak against this virtue signalling script, and if you present an opposing argument that the morals of the left are wrong, you're labelled racist. But it's wrong not to make decisions without democratic votes. The same people who were arguing for a second referendum on the basis that Britain was being forcibly taken out of the EU against its will are now arguing to forcibly remove statues. Yes, In the case of the Edward Colston statue, more could have been done to listen to the campaigns against it by the politicians of Bristol, and the politicians should have listened to what the people of Bristol were saying. But it's also just as clear to me that they didn't because they had other priorities, more important priorities. Things like knife crime, stop and search, and unemployment. The real injustices that black people face, not the superficial stuff. If you have anger about discrimination, it's the politicians you should be confronting with your arguments, not the culture of the country. No violence is justified, and it's important to make the distinction between the real racists, the people who will turn this into a black versus white issue, and me. I'm doing everything I can to stop one side pitting themselves against the other and defending against racial injustices of BAME people. I don't really care about petty statues I've never heard of, or comedies. It's the principle of why they're being removed en masse that I don't agree with. This relentless, pointless culture war has set back equality in the UK and divided people even more. The way you win an argument is not by attacking the home you live in, not by attacking the people you live with, but by trying to get them to agree with you. But removing statues and culture does the complete opposite. We should not be talking about the values of yesterday, but the values of today and tomorrow. But do you agree with me? Join in the debate below and subscribe.